Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with listeners like you.
In the house behind, the life you find is something understood. So there's now those vital minutes, time is keenly found.
A dream can be meaningful even if you don't know what it means. Today's musical creation was made this morning, pre-dawn, called Forever Scope, the way to look into forever. Metaphors, they're not just for dreaming anymore. Evidence shows that we think in them too. Our guest, Dr. Alwin Wagener, explains his embodied cognition theory of dreaming, which explains how dreaming helps us update our metaphors to improve our lives. Also, we'll talk about Dr. Wagener's research into culturally responsible dream work and nightmare relief. I am your host, Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. You know, often I start out the journal by telling some of my personal dreams and what I've been making of them. And this time I want to wait, and in the second half I'll share a few of my dreams I've had about the recent political situation and the election, and I'll invite your calls too, especially around dreams of that topic. But I'm going to wait, hold off those dreams, and we'll have that conversation after the break. Okay, Alwin, hello. Thanks for being on the show.
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. All right, let me introduce you. Alwin E. Wagener, PhD, LPC, and CC, is an assistant professor and director of the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program at Farley Dickinson University. His research focuses on dreams, and he recently published the embodied cognition theory of dreaming and created culturally responsive dream work, which centers clients' cultural beliefs in dream work. And you can find his webpage at dreamingindepth, or how's it? dreamingindepth.com. Did I get that right?
You got that right.
Dreaming
yes.
in Depth. Okay. I missed a G in one of my notes here. Okay, so you mentioned that your culturally responsive dream work has actually now been accepted to the journal Dreaming. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes,
congratulations.
Yes, I'm excited about that.
That's fabulous. So, but let's start with the idea of metaphor, and what does that mean? Embodied cognition theory of dreaming. Like maybe we even want to go back to what's the definition of metaphor.
Yeah. This is getting into the idea of metaphor not as a linguistic device, but as really as part of how we think. And there's a theory about how we think called an embodied cognition theory, which really says that all of our thinking is grounded in the physical experience of being in the world, of taking in information through our senses and physically navigating our environments. And that we then build our understanding of the abstract, love, power, career, relationships on top of that sensory motor foundation. So like an example, if you think of about a baby sort of crawling around in the world, physically experiencing their environment, developing a sense of how their body works in the world. And then as part of that experience, the baby gets picked up, held close to their caregiver. They feel the warmth of the caregiver. That physical experience grounds their understanding of love as they develop the concept of love. So you get the idea of like love lifts you up. You feel warm towards those you love. You feel close to them. And it's linking the physical to the abstract. That is sort of the type of metaphor that I'm talking about. It's called embodied metaphor, and it's part of embodied cognition. It explains how we think. And I was actually reading about research on that, showing how when these abstract concepts are brought up, sensory motor parts of the brain, the parts, sensory being where we take in information from our senses, and motor, like our physical navigation, those parts of the brain light up in relation to the abstract concepts, which is a really interesting finding, and it's part of the grounding for like embodied cognition.
Oh, wait a minute. Can you say that again? I couldn't quite follow that. That sounded interesting, though. Say more, please.
Yeah, so, in just sort of like a computer on your shoulder sort of way of thinking about our understanding of the world, we think from that way of thinking, like we use symbolic understanding to understand the abstract, and there wouldn't be a need for the sensory parts of the brain and the motor parts of the brain to light up to understand those concepts.
Okay.
But you're actually finding that it is linked to our, abstract concepts are linked to our experience of physically being in the world and navigating the world.
Oh, I love your comparison, your metaphor perhaps, your example, let's call it an example, of why love has warmth and connection, and that it's connected to some of these early childhood and baby memories of feeling loved and held, like the skin to, being held and touched and lifted up. Like this is part of the metaphor of love, is that it's warm and it lifts us up. Right, yeah. And that's what that's what you mean by embodied cognition. It's a part of the senses.
Yes. It's our understandings of the abstract are grounded in our understandings of being a physical body in the world. Mm-hmm. Yes, and so an idea of that is that we're constantly navigating our environment when we're awake. We're having new experiences. We're needing to update our understanding of the world and our place in the world and the abstract concepts related to it. Mm-hmm. And so my thought was maybe that's what dreaming is about, constantly updating our mapping of what matters to us in the world, what we should pay attention to and how we should respond. And the research fits well with that, what's been found about dreams. And one of the things about it, and it's a lot to dive into in a short time, so
I'm sure.
To get it. But, one of the things about this theory is it's saying that it explains why dreams are strange, because so much of what we worry about is abstract. And so it's metaphors to capture that abstract nature. So you've got a boss at work. They may be a lot smaller than you, but they're using their power, making you feel trapped, making you feel, not great in your day to day. You may have a dream about a giant, shutting you in a room. That captures the physical experience related to your understanding of power at work. So it's that sort of updating that's going on. So the embodied cognition theory of dreaming explains why dreams are strange. It explains why it has a story-like quality, but not necessarily with clear beginnings and ends, because it's capturing patterns of what's happening in waking life. It explains why we don't necessarily remember our dreams. Well, we don't tend to remember our dreams very easily, at least a lot of people don't, because it's not necessary to remember it. What's important is the neural strengthening of the patterns that we're trying to pick out in waking life that matter to us.
Yeah, I've often wondered about that because, most, there's evidence that most creatures of all kind have dreams, like, octopuses and even spiders have dreams, and yet, as far as we know, they don't sit around talking about their dreams. They maybe don't even remember them. And yet there's something valuable there, and as you're saying, the neural strengthening.
That would, and that's the kind of the evidence looking at the way animals dream.
Yeah.
There's the debate about whether they dream, but it really looks like they dream. They're going through the same sorts of experiences, the same biological markers that we have in dreaming. But my thought about that is what they're dreaming about is just the sensory motor, just their experience of being in the world. A dog is dreaming about smelling something it likes and running towards it, or smelling something it doesn't like and running away. A cat is dreaming about smacking things with its paws, to try and catch a mouse. But we as humans we live in a world where most of our concerns are related to the abstract. At least in the modern world, it's about how our relationship to others and where we stand in relation in career and power and love. And so our dreams are particularly strange. They feel a lot more disconnected from our waking life, and it's harder to make that connection between what we've experienced, what we've been thinking about, what we're worried about during the day, or what we're remembering during the day that's affecting us, and the dreams we have that night.
Right, and so and dreams do evolve, and that helps explain why dream themes evolve as our different thought patterns evolve, and that as we update, I think you use the word schemas, but as we update our map of what's important, that then the dreams that we have tends to change over time. I've certainly noticed this in my own dream journal. Yes,
and it also speaks to why dreams can be helpful in counseling and psychotherapy. If dreams, since a dream is about what matters to you, and it's capturing your understanding of that, your schemas around it, if you pull those out in counseling, psychotherapy, if you talk about that, if you identify what those schemas are, then you can see if they're adaptive or not. So, if a person believes that they're not very important, that everybody else is more important than they are, that's a schema that's influencing their perceptions of everything that you can work with, you can challenge, you can explore to see if they can change those schemas and hopefully function a little bit better in life.
And those patterns may not even be conscious to the person themselves, and so that's one of the advantages of working with dreams. Like I as I started working with dreams, I felt like a very confident person. I had a lot of pride about who I was, and yet the dreams revealed that underneath that pride, that I had felt really small, and that I was kind of using the pride to give myself courage and to move forward, which is not a bad thing. But I didn't really realize how much shame I had about who I was. Instead, I was like, no, I'm fine. It was like a death protest too much. But if you'd asked my conscious mind, I'm like, no, I'm a very confident person. I have no problems, and I don't think of myself as small. And yet, you look at my dreams, and it starts to become really clear that I have had a lot of doubts, and then by working with the dreams, it helped me work through those issues, see where they came from, and now I think I do have a level of confidence that is more authentic than what I used to have. And I'm still, terrified. Most people who listen to the show know I have nightmares about the dream journal all the time, but there's some it's kind of authentic. I can laugh about them because I'm like, oh yeah, there it is again. And so it brought it into consciousness, which is where if you'd asked me in waking life what my issues are, I would never have thought of shame. And yet there it was in the dream. And so it was very helpful to approach this. As I know, many therapists are reluctant to approach dreams because it's too intimidating. Therapists think they have to have the answer. And you're head of this clinical department, and I'm wondering, is that something that comes up for you in your work with clinicians and in the field?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I agree with you about dreams being really helpful for kind of examining how you're thinking about things, how you're understanding things. It gives you a little bit of distance from your day-to-day just ongoing processing. And in that, there's a lot of opportunities to recognize, is this really the only way to see this? And that's really valuable. But getting to the clinicians, I think clinicians generally don't get a lot of training in dreams. And like you said, they're intimidated by them. There's so much of a history of, Freudian and Jungian dream work that leaves clinicians feeling they need some specialized knowledge. They need some, mythical, understandings of myths and being able to understand like complex symbol systems. And I've been working to try and challenge that, to try and open up the understanding among counselors and other psychotherapists that talking about dreams, that they have the skills, the awareness to be able to talk about dreams. Dreams are another experience in people's lives. And I've also been focused on how to do that in a way that respects the differing beliefs that clients have. Yeah. So you've got clients that are very open to any sort of psychological approach that you want to take. If you want to do Jungian work or Gestalt work or any sort of like dream work like that, that's fine for a lot of clients. But then you've got a portion of clients who believe that, God is guiding them through their dreams, or that ancestors are visiting them through dreams, or that dreams are preparing them for the future. You've got a lot of those beliefs too. And you get into a little bit of a challenging situation when the counselor is saying dreams are this psychological thing and this is how you work with them. And the client is thinking, but wait, this is not what I believe, the spiritually, religiously, culturally, I've got a different belief about dreams. It creates a tension there. And that tension isn't necessarily isn't generally very helpful for the outcomes in therapy.
Right.
And so that's where that culturally responsive.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Culturally responsive dream work, because, as a therapist, I'm not looking to convince my client of anything. Like, I want to find out what do they believe. And so say more about what are your ideas around culturally responsive dream work?
Yeah, it's about, I guess it's how do you, first, dreams can be a really significant experience for clients. And if counselors don't see dreams as important, they tend not to ask about them, and they may miss something that's informing how clients understand themselves and their world, how they're making decisions. And so the first part of it is saying that counselors should, just in the very first sessions, invite dreams into counseling. Just saying, if you have dreams, we're working together, feel free to bring those in. It can just be that, just opening the door. That's the first part of it. And then when clients do bring dreams into counseling, the next step is, before you kind of use psychological lenses to analyze the dream, ask the client, what do you believe about dreams? And what are you doing with those dreams? That's a really important part that reveals information that may steer you in a different direction from that psychological approach.
I love that. So you're starting out by asking them their own relationship to dreams, their own ideas about dreams, rather than saying, this is my belief, like asking them what are their beliefs.
Exactly. Instead of just jumping into the idea that dreams are a psychological phenomenon, because they straddle that. There's a lot of evidence showing they have a neuroscience foundation. There's psychological aspects to dreams, but dreams also are very much connected to a wide variety of religious and spiritual and cultural traditions and beliefs. So they sort of straddle the line between those. And in counseling, I think it's more important often to first, at least at first, to understand the client's beliefs, so you don't step on those and don't end up leaving clients feeling like you don't care about them and don't really understand them.
Mm-hmm. Right, and it's not necessary for the counselor and the client to have the same beliefs, well, really about anything, but as long as we can communicate. And so, like, being open to that, because they may never come around to thinking dreams is psychological, but maybe they still find value in dreams all the same.
Exactly, and it's important to understand how they find value in it. Yeah. And then often you're processing that in relation to their life and how it fits in, and exploring that. Using your counseling skills, using the theoretical approach that you take in counseling, but you don't have to challenge what dreams are or tell them that dreams mean something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's like the culture of dream work itself. And then, of course, our people come in with very different histories and different cultural identities. And so I often find I'm asking my clients to educate me, like, what does it mean to be a gay man? What does it mean to be black and living in Mississippi? Or what does it mean to be who you are?
Absolutely.
And so there's other kinds of culture that we surely need to be responsive to in our dream clients.
Yes, and I'm definitely positioning like culturally responsive dream work as part of the wider, as part of a wider idea of being a culturally competent counselor. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of training on respecting religious beliefs and sexual orientation and gender, and exploring that and understanding how that affects clients, race and religion. All those aspects are really important to understand about a client. But one thing that often gets ignored is dreams. And because they can be really important, at least for a portion of clients, in in their beliefs about themselves and their connection to God, to ancestors, to spirit. It's something that I think should be included.
Mm-hmm. Right, and there is fairly often spirituality in dreams. And like I never consider myself, or certainly not for most of my life, consider myself particularly religious. And yet I have found certain levels of connection in my dreams. Totally surprised me that there is some sense of the divine that has emerged in certain dreams. And so there is a lot of the spiritual in the dreams that we have.
And I think that's true for a lot of people, and it doesn't serve counselors to invalidate that experience. Mm-hmm. And there's the danger of invalidating it when you take a firm psychological perspective on dreams. So that's sort of like the gist of it. And then part of that approach, too, is saying use your counseling skills, but to guide like what can be talked about in relation to dreams. Think about what the client has told you about their beliefs. Think about what the client has told you about how they work with their dreams. And then you can talk about dreams. And I've got as part of that culturally responsive dream work, there's a framework in there with the acronym of SAFE. And it really refers to the things you can do with dreams. You can have the client share the dream. Mm-hmm. You can have the client appreciate the dream. SAFE. Yeah. Sorry. Share the dream, appreciate the dream. So you just look at the dream itself. What's in it? What's coming up with it? What cultural aspects are there? You can look at finding the significance, which is the F. Mm-hmm. So how do you see that dream connecting to what matters to you, to your spirituality, to your waking life? But what's significant about it? And then editing. Are there changes you would make based on the dream or within the dream? And those all relate to sort of different strategies you can use with dreams, but you don't have to have a psychological underpinning to it necessarily. You can just use that structural way of thinking about what can be talked about in dreams to facilitate a conversation.
I like that. That's a very simple acronym, so we can give therapists a way to start. And I find that even sharing an appreciation of dreams is a lot, and that I fairly often don't understand what my dreams are, and yet there's just by sharing them and letting myself value them and seeing what arises for me. I guess that would be the significance part, finding significance, that kind of follows naturally after just spending a little time with the dream and kind of basking in it and letting it in.
Yeah, and sometimes just the act of sharing may be all that's needed. A client may get what they need from that. They feel connected, or it brings up an idea about something else they want to talk about. You go with that.
Right.
Other times they may not even be comfortable sharing their dream. There's different beliefs about dreams and what to do with dreams. So, there was in Islam, there's a belief among many. I believe Muhammad said something along the lines of that you shouldn't share nightmares. So there's a prohibition against that. That may be, very important for a variety of clients. And so recognizing that, it may be talking more about the significance of the dream in that case without the sharing piece, or maybe appreciating the details within it, but talking about the significance and how it's affecting their life, and then, working from there. So you're adapting to what the clients believe and what makes sense. In terms of what should be explored there.
Okay. So before we get to the break, I'd like to ask you just a little bit, Alwin, about your history with dreams. How did you get started? What drew you into this field?
Well, it's a long journey. I grew up in Western North Carolina. My family would talk about dreams that they had. And so there was an idea from early on in my life that they could be important. It was never quite clear. There was some exploration of sort of Jungian dream work in the family. There are also ideas that maybe they, sometimes at least they might predict the future. There were different perceptions about what dreams might be that got me intrigued. And I always had intense dreams, and I could remember my dreams very often and would wonder what they meant. And so that led to lots of reading reading Jung, reading other approaches of dream work. I got away from that. I got a philosophy degree, and then I became a blacksmith for about a decade.
Oh, wow.
And did that work for a while. But I always felt a pull to work with people and to find ways to help individuals. And that pulled me into the counseling field. So I got a master's in clinical mental health counseling and then a doctorate in counseling and counselor education. But in the master's program, I had a number of experiences with clients in practicum and internship practice in which talking about dreams with those clients brought out really important information, very relevant to treatment, and also shifted things in what was going as far as the direction we were going in counseling. Suddenly there were new understandings, new awarenesses that took precedence in the work that we were doing. And there really wasn't any training in that. There wasn't any clarity within the counseling field of how to approach that. And so when I went into the doctoral program, that was my focus, was on better understanding dreams, dream work, how nightmares are related to intimate partner violence was very much a focus of my dissertation. But that focus continued. It's always been an area of like mystery and intrigue, and also just seeing it as like this untapped area of potential in therapeutic work. And that's what kept me moving forward there.
I love that. Okay, yeah, I find them so valuable as well, and I love to spread the ideas. I know Leslie Ellis is also extremely passionate about this topic of the importance of dream work in counseling, and I think your research is helping that quite a bit. This is Dr. Alwin Wagener, and we're going to break in just a moment. I want to let you know that after the break, I'll be sharing some dreams that I had in the last week or so since the election, and I would like to particularly invite people to call in if they have dreams around this this big political event that's happening, and I'm very curious to hear what you would have to say about my dreams, Dr. Wagener. And so I think that's it. So we are talking about culturally responsive dream work and the embodied cognition theory of dreaming, which I have to say, taking the host prerogative, then the last 20 seconds, that the whole idea of metaphors makes me think of the Star Trek episode where the whole language is on metaphors, and Picard finally figures out how to communicate with this person he's stuck with, because it's all about metaphors, and so much of our life is all about metaphors. So, Dr. Wagener, we will be right back.
Sounds good.
We're broadcast live from the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz and co-broadcast live in San Jose by KCXU. Dr. Alwin Wagener is our guest, and his web page is dreamingindepth.com. So folks all over the country are interested in dreams. If you want to nudge the algorithm to spread interest in dreaming, please follow the Dream Journal on your favorite podcast app. You may also leave a rating or review if you are so inspired. It helps so much. But most importantly, tell your friends. We do like to spread the idea of talking about dreams, and you can start by telling them about the podcast. So also, please contact me if you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about a new book or to let folks know about your dream-related offerings. Next week, we welcome author Julie Wilkins-Smith, and we'll talk about how understanding our ancestors and disentangling multi-generational emotional patterns can change our lives. All right, welcome back to Dr. Alwin Wagener. So glad to have you on the show again.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to just talk about. I have had two different dreams that seem to be related to the election. That's been very emotional for me. I have found a lot of really big feelings coming up around the election, and so there are two dreams that seem to have something to say about this. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but then this morning I had another one, and so I'm like, okay. So I want us to start by this dream from this morning, and then I'll go back and share a dream I had last week in the few days after the election. A couple of dreams, actually. There were a series of a theme. So let me read this. I want to get it right, so as right as the waking mind ever can, because the waking mind doesn't really speak the same language as dreams, so we just do our best. But here's the middle section of the dream. But I'm on a city bus, and I and another woman get on, and we're going to look for our cars. We ride for a bit. I start talking to the woman with me about the election. And I say, I just don't understand how so many people could have such different ideas than I do. And she explains, we're all just looking to do our own thing. And this is not that satisfying, because I'm like, wait, don't I want to do that too? But this is the answer I got. But then in the dream, I had to go back to looking for my car. Talk about themes. That's an old theme for me, for sure. So just this idea of trying to puzzle out in my sleeping mind of how so many people can have such different ideas from each other. Really, it's such a mystery to me that there's such a difference in these different ways of looking at things in the world. So I'm wondering what you have any comments about that, Alwin?
Yeah, I mean, there's different directions to go. I mean, as like a training piece, if I want to apply the embodied cognition theory of dreaming to it, I have some questions to go down.
Sure. Whatever you think.
If you were a client, I would first be asking you about your dream beliefs. But I know I listen to your podcast and I have some idea of your dream beliefs.
Yeah.
And so I may just go that direction.
Sure.
And one of the things I like to try and get is sort of the decontextualized understanding of what's happening in the dream. So kind of what I like to first do is sort of ask you about some of the details so I understand that. So a city bus, what's your experience with city buses and your thoughts on those?
Oh, gosh. Well, I rode the city buses for a couple of years when I first came to Santa Cruz before I bought myself a car. And it was valuable. It took a long time to get it anywhere, and it didn't always go where I wanted it to go. It was predictable, though, so I could... I knew when to get out to stand at the bus stop. I lived at the time up in Brookdale, which took about an hour to get all the way down to UC Santa Cruz from Brookdale. So each way was like a long road. And it's cold. The bus that I was on is called the Boulder Creek bus. I used to always call the Colder Bleak bus because it was pretty cold and bleak. So I guess that's what I think about city buses.
Okay. All right. and so that's really helpful. And so I'll go to the next thing. I'm going to just pull out the three pieces that seem most significant, which was the city bus, the other woman, and your car.
Yeah.
So for the other woman, what was she like?
I don't have a lot of visuals about her, but she was with me. She's been with me for quite a bit of the stream, and then so she's there, and of course knowing what I believe about dreams immediately go to a part of me. Idea.
Okay.
But there's something there about it's a little bit shadowy, a little bit just kind of taken for granted, being there with me. I remember when I was asking the question in the dream, I had this sudden thought, oh, is she, is she one of those people who think so differently than I do? But it didn't seem to matter. She answered calmly and kindly, and I felt like she was kind. But I'm realizing do I really know what goes on in anyone else's mind? How would we know? And people can tell us the best they can, but you don't really know what's going on in people's minds. I barely know what's going on my own, right?
Yeah, that seems like it might be relevant to the election.
Yeah.
As you say.
Yep.
And then your car. What how would you describe like what your car means to you? Maybe
it's not just your car; it's your freedom. That's
freedom.
Yeah, there's something about that. Like I can go my own way, and I can decide where and when I'm going to go places. And unlike the city bus, where I have to pay attention. And I think culturally, city bus is a fabulous thing, and that if we all had. That if we didn't have to rely so much on our own cars, I think as far as like, impacting the climate and things like that, it would be better if we had some kind of cultural transportation that we could share. But we're not there yet. In places where I live, there are no buses. There are none. I mean, actually, that's not true. Twice a day, a bus comes by. That's it. So it would be extremely difficult to orchestrate my life if I didn't have a car.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, so... that's a way of just sort of quickly extracting a little bit of information about some aspects of the dream. And then one of the things that I find really helpful, and this is all very much sped up. Right?
Oh, yeah.
With the client. But I would sort of, so just sort of reflect back what was in the dream.
Yeah.
So in the dream, you're moving together with others in this slow, sort of cold, bleak
Yes.
way. And you don't really trust where it's going.
True.
And then after an unsatisfying interaction with someone who you feel like you really taken for granted, someone or something they're taken for granted, you're trying to find freedom, a way to figure out how to go forward. And then how does that connect to... I guess, what does that bring up for you? What do you connect that with?
Well, I assume you were going to... I'll finish your sentence for you. How does that connect to the election? Because that's where it's very much in my mind in the last couple of weeks. And so it's intense.
It's intense. And so, I would have asked, actually, just how does that connect to kind of anything? Does that connect to anything?
Of course. As you would, as a respectful therapist that you are. But, it's interesting that my mind leapt in and tried to finish your sentence in something that was meaningful to me.
Yeah.
In a way that
it makes sense.
Yep.
And I can sort of see it as a city bus. You're feeling like there's this collective like movement in a direction that doesn't feel great to you. You don't trust. You're taking for granted that others were feeling the same way, and now you feel like you want to get off that collective bus, that collective direction, and find some way to move forward on your own. But it's hard to figure out how, what that looks like at this point. That's sort of the jumping ahead. That's what I'm hearing a little bit in what you're describing. And this is a very accelerated from
of course, I understand. But the one thing that comes up for me is specifically what I say to the woman is that I'm just like working so hard to try to understand other people, like people in this country, people, it's something that I kind of feel like this tenderness for my dream self in there. It's just like I just don't understand. I'm just really trying to understand, and I just don't get it. There's like this real frustration here, and bafflement, and feeling of not myself being understood either. Yeah. Ooh, that's actually kind of an aha. And
in that moment, you're also where you're acknowledging that you also are then leaving others and going off on your own.
Trying to find. I don't think I ever found the car by the end of the dream.
Yes, but you were looking by yourself. Is that?
Yeah. Well, I don't remember if the woman's still with me or not. I'd have to look back at what I wrote down, whether she's still with me by the end of the dream. But I'm trying to go back to my son, actually, who was earlier in the dream I left behind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's another aspect to, you could dive into.
So while we're accelerating here, I wonder if I could bring in another dream, which was a little series of dreams. I'm curious to get your take on that I had last week. If that's okay, if we could jump over. Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I feel a lot of really intense emotions around the election, and I've kind of summarized those feelings in the phrase heartsick. Like that's kind of my overall feeling about, anyway, I've condensed it down to those two words. And I was really frozen for a couple of days, like really unable to talk even to my partner about the election or anything meaningful. And then I had a dream where I'm sliding down this steep sidewalk, and really steep, like 60 degrees or more. And it ends in a kind of a dead end with cars rushing back and forth. And that, there was more to the dream, but that's the theme I want to mention, because the next night I had a whole series of dreams of that really steep slope. Starts out, I'm walking down a beach. The beach narrows, so I climb up the cliff, which is, again, about 60 degrees steep, and it's crumbling white sandstone. And I get to the top. I think it'll be level ground, but it's not. It's just as steep on the other side, and I'm clinging to this ridge, this like really super sharp ridge, crumbling ridge. And I finally let go and slide back down, and then the dream shifts, and then I'm over and over again sliding down these really, really steep slides, like sometimes it's rock, sometimes it's actual like plastic slides, sometimes it's metal, sometimes just different surfaces. And I'm with people are encouraging me, and they're saying, yes, you're doing great. And it's kind of scary, but then eventually I find it's fun, and I can do it. I can do this sliding, this down thing. And when I wake up, I feel like something has radically shifted in me, and I just feel like this sense of like I'm not in despair anymore, that I have this grit. I wake up with a certain sense of like, okay, now I know, now I'm going to do something. And, make contact with all the, Indivisible and Women's March and Move On and all these different organizations that were helpful for me when, first in the election 2016, and I just felt like I was grounded now. And this is like such a beautiful example of not needing to understand a dream for it to be helpful, because it was helpful for me to start to feel grounded and like I have some traction in my life. And how that relates to letting go down a slide, I have no idea. And so I'm just curious what your comments are about these dreams.
I mean, I think if you're looking at them metaphorically and connecting them to the election, I mean, it totally makes sense. You feel like you're moving forward, but you don't have a lot of control over it. Yeah. And there's danger at the end, especially in the first one with the traffic. Yeah. As you're sliding towards that is a little out of control. The second one, I mean, it sounds like you're climbing up a beach, I'd want to explore it more what that meant. But I mean, a quick guess about what it could be was, you're moving up. You see that there's not what you would hope to be on the other side of the dune or the cliff, and then you slide back, and you're just, it's a little bit out of control. But then you're actually recognizing. How did that one end again? It kind of petered out into just like over slides. It became fun, I guess, was the thing. It became like something enjoyable that I could do, the sliding down. I don't even ever remember coming to the bottom of any of these slides. I'm just sliding, and then there's like a shift, and then I'm sliding again, and then there's a shift, and I'm sliding again. Different circumstances, but usually with other people and people encouraging me, and it starts out scary and ends up being okay, I can do this. This is fun, actually. And it's interesting, like the physical experience of sliding. It can be scary when you don't know what's going to happen and where you're going to land. Right. And it can also be really fun when you have some idea of like, it's safe. There's something to be done. And I mean, that does sound like it connects to your feeling of like, I'm not quite sure where it's going to take me, but I have an idea of like these activities I can do to combat against what I don't like going on. I mean, I can just metaphorically, I can see that, and you can see how it's grounded in the physical in each of these dreams. Like there's a physical experience of sliding, of being out of control, of having your physical body at risk.
Very visceral. It was very visceral. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yep.
Yeah,
no, there's just something like I can feel it in my stomach. Like right now, there's some kind of but there's like surrender. There's like the moment when I let go of the cliff seems like an important moment. There's some kind of surrender that seemed helpful, even though it was scary.
In your stomach right now?
Yeah, because as opposed to the feeling of clinging onto the cliff, clinging onto the sharp ridge, which is just terrifying. I'm like, there's like the whole world is crumbling. There's nothing to hold on to. But once I let go, I realized, there's still a slide. I can go down the slide.
And I'd be inclined to spend a little bit more time really diving into that experience when that shifted from feeling that fear, terror, maybe, I'm not quite sure how strong it was, to the one where it shifted as to almost being fun.
Yeah.
Like, what did you notice in that shift in the dream?
Well, I mean, I got a lot of encouragement. Like, that was one of the things, is that there were people who were either sliding with me or kind of somehow cheering me on. I don't know where they were standing, but they were somehow encouraging me. And, this is what I think of as allies, these dream characters that are supporting me. There's some that, and it was slow because there was many, many slidings. I mean, 6, 7, 10, 12, I don't know. Many times of sliding. And so the transition was slow, like over many times of sliding. But
when it became a collective shared experience, it shifted from being as scary to more fun.
Yeah. I'm just remembering the part of the dream of walking down the beach when there's a man walking with me, and then there's a woman and a woman. The woman's more in the water. And when I start climbing up the cliff, she's walking into the water, like kind of hugging along the cliff, and just watching her go was really sad. And then by the time I'm climbing, the man's not with me anymore, and so I'm alone. But then as I let go and slide down, I start to regain my support.
Okay. And what was the woman like who wandered off into the water?
Let's see. You just can see her from the back. Kind of a mirage.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
kind of vague.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't have a real good sense of her, but it's sad, and there is sadness, like about watching Kamala Harris's concession speech, sad and inspiring. Watching her walk off the stage was like really sad.
Okay. Yeah. And moving forward with a sense of loss in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it all, I
Totally.
mean, it makes sense as far as looking at it from a metaphor of like all you've been experiencing in relation to your reactions to the election. And there's always more you can sort of dive into. And then an exercise, and it gets into that editing portion as well.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Yeah.
How, if you were to, what would you like to change in that dream? If you can just change some small aspects of it, what would you change?
Oh, my God. Okay. That's intense. So this is the part of this dream work that I have difficulty with. So let me just go with it and see what comes up for me. Just what came to mind was something about being like a child, being childlike. There's something about the sliding down that feels childlike. And if I could kind of reclaim some part of that of myself.
So you definitely keep the fun part of the sliding.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's what just came to me. I just got kind of the word child and thinking about that, being a child or childlike.
Which part of the dream do you feel like you'd most like to get rid of? Not worrying about what the dream like means or anything, but just the actual experience of the dream. What part of it would you most like to have gone from that experience?
Well, I would love to have there be some land at the top. And so if I could want to change it, I'll change it. That would be like to get to the top of the cliff and be able to go out onto the ground, because that's like the scariest part, is when I'm holding onto the ridge and I get the shock, like, oh no, I'm not made it. I'm not on safe ground anymore. I thought I was heading towards safe ground, and I'm not.
So it's the and kind of connecting it. It's about finding safe ground.
Yeah.
That's what you'd like to find that you didn't find in that dream.
Right.
And then I'd be, therapeutically, I'd want to sort of jump into like what makes something feel safe, what makes safe for safe ground, exploring that and directions and how it relates to your life, and maybe what could even be done to support that sort of shift. So.
Well, I'll mull those things over, Dr. Wagener. This has been wonderful, and I I appreciate the chance to kind of work on these really, really, I feel like they're really important dreams for me and to share them on the air. So I appreciate your support. So I want to get back to you, Alwin, and maybe share a little bit about how folks can get in touch with you and what you might have to offer, like maybe some of the articles. I can certainly post links on the episode page to some of the articles you've written about embodied cognition, theory of dreaming, and also culturally responsive dream work. So we have,
The website's a good spot to find my information and get in touch with me. I also have some DreamWork tools with using AI on there. So kind of I would say they don't tell you what your dreams mean necessarily, but they're really good for reflecting on the dreams and helping you think about them in new ways. So there's one that tries to take an embodied cognition theory of dreaming approach to look at it. If it's just a sensory motor rehearsal of what matters in waking, what could it be? If it's metaphoric, what might this dream be about? And then I also have ones that take your dream, look at the themes, look at what's going on in there, put a title to it, and illustrate the title based on what was in the dream. I have another one that will take your dream, look at what the content and the themes in it, and then look for traditional cultural stories from around the world with similar themes and content, at least in some way, to share. Sort of it kind of dives into some of the Jungian approaches of connecting ones to shared experiences, and through that sometimes finding ways to understand your own experiences a little bit more broadly. And so there's a variety of tools on there that are kind of fun to play with.
Okay. Alwin, I don't usually do this, but we have a kind of urgent, extremely short. He promises to be extremely quick on the call. Is this Ray? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hey, Catherine, I just wanted to give you a little nugget of hope and encouragement. I had a dream last night that was similar to part of one of yours, where I was in a yoga studio, and I was held by three beautiful women, which might not seem like it's relating to your dream, but it was like there were fires all around us, and you're part of sliding down, and people are encouraging you, and you felt like it was kind of fun, and there was, I don't know where you were sliding to, but when I was in this little realm of my dream this morning, and I felt comforted even while I watched all these fires. And I didn't really relate that to the election until you said something about the election.
Thank you, Ray. I really appreciate that. We could all use a little more comforting right now.
All together, and we will get through it.
Okay. Thanks, Ray. Take care now.
All right.
I got to let you go.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Alwin, thanks for that. Appreciate that, those calls. And so you have so many wonderful resources on your webpage, dreamingindepth.com, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I look forward to chatting some more at some other conference or in the future, and good luck with all your research. Any final
so much.
encouragements you want to offer our listeners?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and I just encourage people to pay attention to their dreams and use that as a space to reflect on their life, and I think it can be really helpful in developing as a human being. So I guess that's some final thoughts on there.
Beautiful. Thank you. That is right on. Thank you so much, Alwin. Take care.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you all for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, and we are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. The podcast is released on the Monday after the show. It spreads interest in dreaming when you subscribe, rate, and review. My name is Catherine Bell. You can find out about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. You can email me at catherine@ksqd.org, Katherine. Follow Experiential Dreamwork and hashtag The Dream Journal on Facebook and Instagram to find out about upcoming shows. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, engineer and music creator, and Tony Rosamano for the phones. Intro and outro pieces are both by Mood Science. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal. Okay.
very sorry things are tough. You contracted that horrible disease. Got to admit that I feel so lucky. It's nothing I